This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brighton Central School District Board of Education business meeting for September 15th, 2020. Please take notice that the Board of Education of the Brighton Central School District, in response to the continuing emergency circumstances caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and consistent with the New York State Governor's executive orders, is conducting its scheduled public meeting this evening, September 15th, 2020 at 7 p.m., held via Zoom and webinar live stream through our Brighton Central School District webpage. We will offer in a moment the opportunity for public comment, as is our custom at all of our board meetings. As Dr. McGowan indicated, if you wish to speak to the board this evening, please go to the chat function, put your name and your address in, and we will call on you and activate your audio at that point in time. At that point in time, you'll be unmuted and called on to comment. It would be also a good time, as it's the first meeting of the school year, I would like to remind folks about the public participation section of our meeting. We do hold that at every scheduled meeting, and those wishing to speak will be recognized. You have 3 minutes for remarks, and we ask that the remarks, they can be a question, they can be a comment, they don't have to pertain to the agenda specifically this evening, but
Mr. Kukovic, you muted there for a second. You said to the agenda this evening, public comments, and then I went on mute. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Did I get the 3 minutes in? Did you hear me say that?
You said it doesn't have to be pertained to any
Okay.
agenda.
It doesn't have to pertain to an agenda item. I would remind folks, though, that also, in addition to public comment at a board meeting, which again is limited to a statement or a brief question, and if it's something that can be answered quickly, we do. Otherwise, we take that under advisement and we'll get back to you with an answer. There are multiple opportunities to engage with the district. We encourage you, if it's something of a more lengthy issue, or if it's something more specific to you, your child, specifically to your family, that you go ahead and write to us. You can email or phone Dr. McGowan. You can do that to me on behalf of the Board of Education, or directly to Kim Lanzafame, our board and district clerk. All of our contact information is on the district website. Additionally, we're in a period of time where we offer many opportunities for public input and comment, if you will, including tomorrow. Dr. McGowan will be holding a town hall at 5 p.m. and there is a thought exchange that's active for that town hall. If you go to the district webpage, you'll find the link for that thought exchange, and you're welcome to ask a question at that point. You can also watch on the live stream tomorrow and add a comment or a question during the chat at that point in time. So, having said all of that, we open the opportunity now for public participation. And Dr. McGowan, let us know who would be first on the list.
First on the list would be Pamela Kim. Go ahead, she's all set. Go ahead, Pamela.
Hi, I would like to request that Mike Loeb be the first speaker.
Okay, no problem at all. I'll find Michael. Just give me 1 second. Go ahead, Michael, you're all set.
Hello, Dr. McGowan and board members. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I want to start by saying that I am a proud Brighton alum and a proud Brighton parent as well. I'm going to be reading an open letter. I will do my best to get it done in 3 minutes. It's been circulating on change.org and in fact has over 1,000 signatures. When I read this letter, I just want everybody to be aware that I am as strong a supporter as the Brighton School District as anybody could be. I love the education that I received, the experience that I received, and I am extremely excited about the opportunities that my children have. That being said, I think it's important that we maintain our integrity as a school district, and that's what brings me to the open letter. So As concerned community members and Brighton Central School District alumni, we are writing to request an independent investigation of educator sexual abuse cases that have come to light. In late 2019, 2 women filed lawsuits against former BCSD gym teacher and Brighton gymnastics coach Duncan Ververs, starting when they were 12 and 13 years old, they said. Ververs abused them hundreds of times at various locations, including then Council Rock Elementary School. And in August 2020, Brighton High School graduate Tara Yellen told a reporter that Gary Weiner, a now retired BHS English teacher and department head, engaged in abusive sexual encounters with her while she was a student at the school. Yellen has filed suit against BCSD for failing in its duty to protect her. More educator abuse allegations, not yet officially aired, continue to make rounds in the Brighton community. If other teachers and administrators were aware of what was happening to students, it appears their intervention was not sufficient to stop the abuse. Some accused teachers remain employed at the district for years, potentially exposing other students to the risk of similar harm. Whenever sexual abuse of minors occurs, the consequences can be devastating and far-reaching. In recognition of this lasting impact on lives, New York's Child Victims Act now extends the statute of limitations for survivors to file claims against perpetrators. Sexual crimes against children result in damage that lasts well into adulthood in most children, and in the majority is never fully repaired. These disturbing realities make it clear that the district needs to commission a full independent investigation into incidents of teacher sexual misconduct against students, to be followed by a report of corroborated findings. Such an investigation would demonstrate BCSD's ongoing commitment to student safety and well-being, as well as the kind of accountability and transparency that can promote healing for survivors and families. The investigation proposed would have 3 main objectives. First, to document instances of past or current sexual abuse at district schools. Second, to hold faculty and administrators accountable for any wrongdoing. And third, to draw on these findings to inform sexual abuse prevention strategies in the future. The first phase should involve outreach to community members who may wish to report abuse or share witness accounts. Those who report this would be given the choice to keep their identifying information confidential in any public summary of findings. For generations, BCSD has produced thinkers and doers who are ready to shine light wherever it is needed. We believe that a thorough accounting of educator abuse, along with concrete strategies to better protect students going forward, will help the district continue its proud legacy. Thank you very much for allowing me the time to read this. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm a proud Brighton graduate. So thank you. And thank you to the board for all that you do.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate that. Dr. McGowan, do you have anything?
I do, you know, there's a couple of different ways I'd like to respond, but I think it'd probably be more productive if the other speakers relative to this particular issue have the chance to speak. I wouldn't want them to feel as though there's not an opportunity for them to
Okay.
speak as well. So
That's fine.
if that's all right with you. Pam Kim is up next.
I would like to start off by reading. Okay. I would like to start off by reading some comments that were left on the petition. I won't be reading any names. I'm pretty confused as to why an investigation needs public support to happen in the first place. Schools are responsible for investigations like this, immediate, effective, professional, and with transparent conclusions. End of story. Brighton administrators do not perpetuate rape culture. We are better than this, and you need to be too. The community is paying your salaries and funding our area's education. An investigation into any report of sexual impropriety is the very least expected of you. Please do your jobs. Next comment. I am a survivor of this abuse. Next comment. I am so sorry that the abuse described here appears to have been an open secret. Recent conversations with friends from the classes of 90 and 92 confirm that the abuse was known, although I doubt many of my peers would have called it abuse then. We lived in a culture of victim blaming, ridicule, and silence, particularly when the abuse or assault was sexual. May the culture that enabled it be investigated, and may the women who were abused as girls find healing. Next comment. I trusted my school. I didn't expect it to be perfect, but I trusted it. I want assurance that what happened in the 80s could not happen now. Next comment. Investigating these incidents and developing better protocols and processes to protect current and future students is imperative. Next comment. It was common knowledge to students that Mr. Weiner was actively involved with and pursuing underage students. Next comment. While in the 80s, we were encouraged to tattle on our peers for suspected drug use, adults were never held accountable for it, nor children believed when allegations were made against them. For years, so many have been resigned to a tacit acceptance that adults were always right, no matter how egregious their actions. I also have a brief statement I would like to read that I wrote. I graduated in '99. I had Mr. Ververs and Doc Weiner. Doc Weiner was one of my favorite teachers at the time. I idolized him like many of us did. Finding out about his disgusting abuse of Tara now is damaging. It makes me sick to think that BCSD continued to employ this predator and to subject vulnerable students to abuse. It also makes me sick to know that Doc Weiner went on to teach and to be an administrator in both Greece and Pittsford. How many students have been harmed? After this petition went out, I had somebody confess to me about a different teacher in Brighton. It was so obvious she was still traumatized and terrified, but she told me because she needs to begin to heal. I sent my daughter to BCSD, and I am disgusted to know that these issues are still not taken seriously. In addition to asking for an independent investigation of these issues, I'm asking you, what are the protocols in place to protect current students and to ensure that they are heard and not further marginalized when they come forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate that.
And I'll speak to that directly, Pamela, after the next comment, unless there are other ones. Elizabeth Swoboda.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I am also a Brighton alumna, class of '99, and I'm a former student of a teacher named in one of these sexual abuse lawsuits. And through this whole thing, I can't help but think of how easily I or one of my classmates could have been on the receiving end of this abuse, and it's very chilling. But I think by starting an independent investigation of these incidents of teacher sexual abuse, Brighton can take accountability for the ways that students were hurt in the past and get the information that's needed to create safeguards for today's students. And schools like Connecticut's Choate Rosemary Hall and Presentation High School in California, both great institutions, have really set the standard for how such investigation should be done. They owned that they had a problem in the past and they set a different direction forward. And I think that Brighton needs to act now because there's nothing more important than making sure every student continues to be safe in the classroom. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your comments, Elizabeth. We appreciate that.
I don't see any other requests in the chat to speak, but we're just actually calling people one more time if they'd like to enter their name and address in the chat so we can call on you for public comment. I don't see any others. Mark, would you like me to address the comments that have been made?
Yeah, if you would, if you care to, Dr. McGowan, at this point.
Sure. First of all, there's nothing I can say in this comment period that will somehow make people feel tremendously better or make those things go away. And nor do I seek to do that. Other than if it provides any comfort, explain to you, to Pam's question, what some of the current approaches to this are and say how we feel about it. And I can tell you that when these allegations have come to light and we've been informed of them through the Child Victims Act process, we have internally found the situations to be on their surface and in allegation form abhorrent and counter to everything that we hope to be as a school district. That said, because both of those situations referenced are ongoing litigations, we can't speak to those further other than to say in a very general sense, again, that in allegation form, in those papers that we've received, we find those to be situations that are entirely unacceptable and not who we are as an organization. I can say that I would just ask Michael if you could go back on mute.
Sorry about that.
No
Sorry,
problem.
Mark.
No sweat.
Get it somewhere. Hey, Mike.
So in any sense, we share the sentiments that were expressed tonight relative to, the unacceptable nature, I think quite obviously, of what's been presented. I can only speak to the last 11 plus years. I'm in my 12th year here. And I can say with every confidence that when presented with allegations, they have been investigated thoroughly. I can't speak for before this, and particularly in these situations, speak to what's been done or not done relative to these litigations. I can say that it is not that this happens often. So I think the community should understand that. This is not an ongoing issue, but we're aware organizationally, as other organizations are, of the fact that these things can occur. And we pay attention to that, very careful attention to it. We don't take anything for granted. We investigate internally. We involve the police department. We often consult with Bavona. And following these allegations, file what's referred to as a Part 83 report with the State Education Department, which prompts their independent investigation of each situation relative to the certification of that individual. So there is never anything that is done to ignore these situations or not follow up. They are handled with a tremendous amount of veracity and seriousness. And that happens in each and every situation. So if there are issues that we are not aware of, and it's been alleged in some of the comments that there are persistent rumors of continued situations that might be happening or have happened, we need to know that. And we will follow up. We need to be made aware of that, and we will follow up, and we will follow up immediately. I would encourage people to let us know, and if they feel uncomfortable with their name being used, the Safe Schools Helpline, and the information is all at bcsd.org for how to make a report, is a completely confidential way to approach making a report of that nature, and would allow us then to follow up without somebody feeling as though there's the potential for retribution. We want to know that. I want to be very clear about that. We want to know that so that we can follow up, because we will never not follow up on these situations. Being just presented with this tonight, this particular petition, it's certainly something that we'd want to talk about with the board and consider further, and think about what we do and what we can do better, and certainly look at some of the schools that have been referenced tonight in terms of their process and understand that more. And we're open to that feedback and open to what you're saying to us tonight. That's I want people to know what we're doing now and how important that is to us, but not in the absence of being open to additional feedback, and appreciate people bringing this forward tonight. It is as important to us as it is to you. Mr. Kekanovich? Yeah,
Dr. McGowan, thank you. And the only thing I would add is that I've been a board member for 15 years. I've been president the whole time that Kevin has been our superintendent, nearly in our 12th year. And we understand the duty to report. Even board members have a duty to report all employees of the district. And we take that very seriously. And I would just reiterate that specific to anything that someone believes is occurring or has occurred recently or is occurring in an ongoing way, we need to know that. And it needs to be reported to a trusted adult or through the Safe Schools hotline anonymously. And the district will investigate. So I thank those 3 members of the community who came tonight to speak, and I appreciate their input. We appreciate their input as a board, and we certainly will take any petition along with comments presented to us under advisement. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, then may we then move on to the agenda, folks, and a motion, please, to approve our agenda.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Andrea and seconded by Larry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. That's 7 in favor, none opposed. A motion, please, for approval of the minutes from our August 11th, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Moved by Julene and seconded by Karen?
Christina.
Christina, I'm sorry, Christina. Does anyone have any corrections, additions, deletions to those minutes? All right, fantastic. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And that would be 7 in favor and none opposed. Thank you. This being a business meeting, we have a report section, even though not everything is in full swing yet. We have our financial report, which this month consists of the July period ending July 31st treasurer's report that has been provided to us. Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything further from Lou that we need at the current time?
No.
And more of that reporting will come out later in September and into early October as we begin really rolling into the entirety of the school year. Then may we have a motion to receive the treasurer's report year dated ending July 31st, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Larry and seconded by Karen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That'd be 7 in favor and none opposed. And tonight, I do believe we are welcoming our student representative from Brighton High School, Stella Kleinman.
Hi, I'm Stella. I'm really excited to be the student rep this year. I put together a little report of things that are going well and some things that I think we need to improve a little bit, just based off of our first couple days. For me personally, I think the biggest thing going really well was every student was keeping their mask on at all times. I didn't see anyone not wearing one, which is really good. I think on behalf of all the students, we're just really excited to be back in person because the online school was a little difficult for a lot of us. I also think that the clubs and the sports teams have been really patient in dealing with the restrictions that we've faced, and I know we've all been a little disappointed with some of the uncertainty, but I think people are taking it really well. I also think our first seminar sessions went well with the career planning, especially for the seniors. And when we did the link orientation over the summer, that seemed to run really smoothly. And I just had my first link session today, and that also went well. Overall, the freshmen seem to be getting the hang of high school, and I'm really proud of them for that. I know it can be difficult. And then for some things that I think have been a little bit confusing, is we're still really trying to get used to the asynchronous days and not really knowing when things are due and not really knowing how to use Schoology and certain links not being where we want them to be. So I think that will just take some getting used to. There's also been a lot of confusion about homecoming, and people keep asking me if it's happening in March, if it's happening now. So I guess people just really kind of want more answers on that. One thing we definitely might need to work on is keeping the students socially distanced during flex, because on the first day of school, I remember we were all trying to get outside and the hallway got super crowded, and I thought that was a little bit dangerous, so we might want to have to rethink our approach to that. And then another issue was with the attendance office. I had like 4 or 5 people tell me that their late arrival, early dismissal forms, since they hadn't been processed yet, the attendance office was marking them absent even if their parents had called in, which I know can be really frustrating to students. That actually happened to me. I got like 4 calls when I had first period free and came in late and my parents called in. So I don't know. I bet it'll get better when the early dismissal forms get processed, but that was definitely a little frustrating. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Well, Stella, thank you very much. And I can tell already, we are really going to benefit from having an on-the-scene reporter reporting out from Brighton High School. So thank you for sharing out. And I like your positive, upbeat attitude. And there are more questions than answers right now, is what I would say. And we're going to make this work. So I don't know, Dr. McGowan, if you have any comment to Stella's remarks.
No, I hope Dr. Hall was listening carefully, but we'll talk about some of those things, of course, with the high school too. And that's great feedback, Stella, from the ground. You see it much better often than we do. So thanks a lot for bringing those things up.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your ability to join us this evening. We do appreciate it. Our Board of Education Standing Committee reports. Monroe County School Boards Association has 3 standing committees that we are party to, that we attend the meetings on a monthly basis. Most of that is just getting up to speed right now. Labor Relations meets on September 30th. The topic is around emergency response drills. Information Exchange meets next week, the 23rd. That next week or the week after? Next week. The 23rd. Topically, relevant in that it's reflections on virtual learning. Our own Dr. Debbie Baker highlighting a stellar group of 4 curriculum and instruction people from around the county. And legislative committee did meet. Karen and I attended legislative committee last Wednesday, the 9th. And Karen, would you like to report out on that?
Well, first of it was exciting to be somewhere in person because that doesn't happen very often. It's probably the last one I'll be able to attend in person. Now that Teddy and Peggy are going back to preschool, I won't ask family members to watch Peggy while I'm there. So, as my stay-at-home parent duties are omnipresent, Mark will take the lead on that. But it was just sort of getting our feet back under us, approving our minutes from March because we haven't met since then, right? We met at the beginning of March.
Right.
So it was like entering a room that's been closed up for 6 months, but our priorities remain the same, especially in these times, seeing schools fully funded, as we're looking at the potential of having aid payments delayed or possibly withheld. That remains our utmost priority as we're looking to source new materials and teach in different ways. We can't do that without full funding from the state.
It's a very good point, Karen. Legislative committee is typically, we review where we are in terms of the mission. One of the things we're going to do this year, there are a number of position papers, as most of you know, and talking points that are generated by School Boards Association through legislative committee. So we're going to go ahead and review through there, and there are a number of those that have to be updated. Subcommittee work will work on that. And then also the other thing with our legislative, the folks who are elected to represent us in the Assembly and the Senate, everything is fully in flux in most of Monroe County right now. So after the election, we'll be meeting with many newly elected individuals or relatively new folks in their roles. So that is all yet to come. I will make note, as Karen mentioned, who knew that the standing committees being on Wednesdays at noon would turn out to be problematic for hybrid learning when Wednesdays around the county are most districts that are doing hybrid learning, children are at home. So the association is obviously well aware of that. We'll have to take a look at it. Information exchange and labor relations meetings will be videotaped for members later viewing. Legislative committee doesn't really work that way, so we're trying to discuss whether maybe holding a meeting early in the day or later in the day might help. So, Sherry and the group are very responsive, and we'll continue to work on how that Wednesday schedule will play out. So we'll figure it out. We'll make it work just like everything else we're doing this school year as we move along. So I guess next up, other board member reports. Again, this is traditionally we go around and talk about activities that we've been involved with. Obviously new in the year, and we're still, most of us, pandemic and Zooming and all. Do any of you have anything that you wish to share with the group as far as your individual activities? As Karen, it was good to get out. I will say that the DoubleTree Hotel and the arrangements worked out very well. We had the huge ballroom, very socially distant. Everybody was masked up. So while it felt weird to be out, it did seem to work. So Larry, I'm sorry.
No, I'll be better prepared for a construction update. Obviously, we've been going great gangbusters all summer at the schools. They're looking, in some cases, with projects very much in motion, but the work at Council Rock is amazing. Not done yet, still a ways to go at Council Rock. But I'll prepare a better update for October and sort of check in with Lou to make sure we're covering everything. But there has been a flurry of activity in the school over the schools, plural, over the summer. Some of it's very visible in front of the high school. Some of it's invisible behind walls and on roofs and things like that. But I'll be better prepared to discuss that next time. And as you and Karen well know, we haven't had our first audit meeting of the year. That'll be upcoming.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. And that's a great reminder too. We are going to break up into small groups sometime probably October-ish. We're talking right now with Kevin, and do a construction type tour of all 4 buildings, take a look at where we are, where we stand internally. We'll do that socially distant, masked up, small group, and we'll figure out a way to make that work. So thank you. Thank you, Larry, for that ad. Next up this evening, we have our Brighton Teachers Association report. Nicole, welcome. Kevin, do you need to unmute Nicole, or can she do it? There you go.
Sorry, I'm distracted because the dogs wanted in here with me and now one of them wants out. So I'll go really fast. It's nice to see everybody. It's been so exciting getting to see kids again in person. I just can't tell you what a thrill it is. And the first day when everyone came in and they were so nervous, and that is gone. They're no longer nervous. They're very happy to be there. So just as the teachers. The almost 380 members of the Brighton Teachers Association are thrilled to be back working with our Brighton students and families. Although this opening is likely the most challenging one yet, we hope you know how committed we are to educating and supporting your children. With challenge also comes opportunities for growth. Our teachers, nurses, and academic support instructors were excited to welcome the students back to school last week in both the fully remote and hybrid learning environments. It was great to see the students in person or on the screen. It was just great to see our students again. Brighton Teachers Association members spent a good part of the summer participating in a variety of committees, workshops, and professional development in preparation for the reopening. We continue to learn, grow, adapt, and adjust to meet the needs of our students and families. Thank you all for your continued support. We truly appreciate working in partnership with the district and particularly with our Brighton families. Together, we are going to have an incredibly successful year for our Brighton community. So thanks. It's great to be back with all of you.
Thank you, Nicole. It's great to see you again. It is great to be back, and we are going to have a great year. So we look forward to hearing more detail from you as we move forward also. So thank you very much. Next up, our PTSA report, and we welcome one of our PTSA reps to the board, new in her role this year, Eleanor Oy. Eleanor, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Mark. I had a very brief report. We had our first meeting of the year this morning, and basically we are kind of just getting up to speed right now. The timing of PTSA meetings has changed, so please pay attention to the calendar that's on the Brighton School District and everything else. The meetings used to be on Wednesdays, but with all students being full remote on Wednesdays, they varied the timing. So some meetings will be on Tuesdays, some on Thursdays, and some on Wednesday evenings. Just wanted to let you know. The PTSA are right now in the middle of school pictures. Obviously, we're not allowed in the buildings right now, which is great because it is keeping our students safe. But we are working with a vendor who is taking pictures this week at the high school and middle school, and then next week in French Road and Council Rock. We are also working on an online spiritware sale, which should go live by the end of this week or beginning of next week. There are some very cute, new, unique designs that are documenting 2020, the virus, and Zoom learning. And all of this, there's going to be more options this year for spiritware because it's going to be an on-demand sale, basically, so we can order ahead of time and then they'll be shipped and delivered. We're still working on the exact delivery system, but they'll be basically like dropped at your house, so touchless delivery right to your doorstep one way or another. The PTSA also provided 65 boxed lunches for the security, cleaning, and grounds crew on September 9th. This was the way of us saying thank you to them for all the extra work they're doing to keep our students safe and healthy and the buildings clean. PTSA has changed the central meeting schedule, as I mentioned before. Our next meeting is Wednesday, October 14th at 7 p.m., where we're going to have our first evening speaker, which will be on equity and inclusion. It's a local leader in that community who will be speaking to our group. And it's also not too late to purchase a PTSA calendar, though we do have very limited supplies at this point, but we have reordered some more. They were anticipating slightly lower sales this year, and actually the sales have increased, which is a wonderful thing. But you can get them at Ars Market, and also, like I said, there will be more information launching soon about where you can get them. And that's basically it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the update, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. So next up, Dr. McGowan, and I'm sure you have nothing to add in the superintendent's report here on this opening night.
I'm going to give a brief presentation, as brief as I can, I promise, on reopening, and just a quick update this evening for everybody who's not been at the PTSA meeting and heard this or in other spaces, but just a quick update for community members that might not otherwise know where we're at exactly, and give people kind of a perspective on how we feel about where we are right now. Just to give a perspective to this in terms of a timeline, really thinking about 3 phases. The shutdown began in March. I was sharing with the PTSA this morning. I remember being at a session with Dr. Mendoza, our county executive, Adam Bello, and Congressman Morelli on the Saturday prior to when we actually ended up closing. And it was a really great session. They walked through the medical information, helped us understand this COVID thing, this potential pandemic that was happening. And I got to tell you, I think really anybody in the room, maybe other than Dr. Mendoza at that point, if you had said, do you think in the fall we'll still be having this conversation? People would have said, no, this will be a couple months and it'll pass. And many of us have been through SARS and H1N1 in terms of potential risk to schools. And really, even at that point, did not see how this would progress. I really thought as a parent of a kid in the class of 2020 that we'd still be having a graduation. I did not think at that moment that everything would change the way it has changed. But it did. It began and we shut down. We had rolling cancellations then during that period of time, or as we started to realize the trips had to be canceled then in April, and then now May, and then June, of course. And we were implementing crisis education. That was different. We've talked now about how we're in a circumstance, not a crisis, but at that point it was a crisis. And I've said many times before, so many people here did such an incredible job of building the airplane as it was leaving the runway and lifting an entire system from in the classroom with no notice to a virtual environment. And we learned quite a bit during that time and attempted to continue to learn and grow. And we developed crisis services. A couple thousand meals a week were being distributed, some by bus to doorstops and other people coming to the district for that. But throughout that time, really started to focus on, okay, what do we need to do to reach out? Provide information on opportunities for childcare for frontline workers, think about food and basic needs for families, reached out to families to try and connect that way, and tried to really enhance our communication at that point. That's when a lot of virtual town halls started to happen, these Facebook Live events, and trying to do everything we could to connect with the community while we were physically disconnected. May and June, it evolved at that point. We also had a budget crisis that was evolving. What was going to be a very difficult budget year, we knew we'd have to do reductions. We expected a little bit more in state aid after the governor's proposal. That was not only gone, but additional money was going to be lost. And we had obviously a very significant concern at that point. The closure was then extended. It was going to appear at that point that now we'd be out for nearly the rest of the year. We also had to establish a vote that was completely by absentee ballot, very, very different approach, and manage that. And we were doing summer planning at that point, talking about what do we need to do to get our staff up to speed and to support them over the summer so that we're prepared for next year, whatever next year will look like. What do we need to do to figure out where kids are going to land at the end of all this? How are we going to support them going into next year academically, from a mental health perspective, et cetera? And then how are we going to accommodate these significant changes in terms of budget? And then we moved into July and August in this third phase before we landed where we are right now. And we implemented that professional development that we had planned. We continued our initial planning. So, there wasn't just summer planning happening, but in May and June, a lot of conversations around what would virtual learning look like if we had to continue that. So we were planning even all the way back at that point. We continued that initial planning into July and August, into the beginning of July. Just after the halfway point of July, we received our guidance from the state, one of many different pieces of guidance, but kind of the be all and end all of what we were supposed to get in terms of being able to reopen. And I say the June guidance, and we didn't get it till mid-July. I think it's important to understand that context. Those aren't sour grapes or a complaint, but for people to understand the short time frame that was given at that point. And we convened a task force then, a pretty significant number of people, including parent representatives, board representatives, administrators, staff members, teachers, on the operation side and on the instructional side. And those two groups worked on what do we do in terms of education and what do we do in terms of safety. Operated separately, and then of course their findings came together to adhere to the guidance, keeping safety as the number one priority in all the conversations, but then how do we offer an educational opportunity at the same time and continue to plug along towards the best opportunity for our kids, always maintaining that safety had to be the overriding guidance for us. We solicited parent feedback then based on our initial findings and our initial plans, our draft plans. Important to point out that some districts did surveys earlier than us. That has come up a couple of times. Why didn't you survey earlier? Well, candidly, our community doesn't really love it when we ask for their opinion and then don't follow through on their choice. In other words, many districts asked people to make choices or indicate preferences around types of programming that wasn't possible once the guidance came out. We didn't feel comfortable putting scenarios together and giving people scenarios that we weren't sure would be at all allowed in the guidance. And as it turned out, wasn't allowed in the guidance, wasn't even a possibility. So no sense having people start making plans, indicate preferences, and then feel as though we weren't honoring their preferences when in fact the state prohibited us from doing exactly that. We really had to adhere to a pretty strict set of guidance that limited our options and our ability to provide different opportunities. So really for us, getting family feedback, community feedback came exactly at the right time. We got it when we needed it, I guess is the point. Once we could put draft plans together that adhered to the guidance. And then we could make adjustments based on family feedback. And that's how it all ended up playing out. We refined our plans. We finalized those plans. We got final plans out to the community then and asked people to make their determination whether they were going to opt for a hybrid program or for the all remote program. And knowing that we had limited resources, did our best to provide the most vibrant, robust program we could on both ends of that coin, and even made adjustments along the way to add additional courses for kids in the all remote world where we were limited based on not hiring an administrator when Mike Pincelli became the principal at Brockport High School, and decided to devote that resource for this year only to these additional courses so our kids in the remote world could get some of the AP courses and elective courses that they were lacking, continue to progress towards a strong transcript for their college application, but also towards graduation. And then that got us to where we are now. But meanwhile, we had all these other things happening, right? Capital project work. Larry talked a little bit about that. Significant work in all the buildings, really unbelievable, all happening simultaneously. Incidentally, at Council Rock, really able to get further ahead, and that helped us with our planning based on time shut down in the building. We pushed crews as hard as we could during that time while kids weren't there to get as much work done as possible. We had that significant budget change that I mentioned, and we had to account for the 20% potential reduction from the state that we would feel during the year, which is right now withholding. It's been much publicized that there's a state aid cut. It's a withholding. We do expect it's potentially to be cut, and we've accounted for that in this year's budget, but had to be very careful in doing that. We had to create that vote by absentee ballot, a very complex, labor-intensive process. We had to hire a new principal. Mr. Nunez joined us at 12 Corners Middle School. We're very excited for that. He's off to a fantastic start. We were delivering and providing 2,000 meals a week, as I had mentioned, distributing devices to anybody who needed it, including MiFi, actually devices for families without internet access, to make sure all of our kids could engage in coursework during that period of time. And that's continued now as well. We had graduations, multiple. We had parades. We had drive-through pickups. We had all sorts of events to try and still make it an outstanding experience for our kids and really connect with all of our families in some different ways and try and think differently about that. We also engaged in a collaborative process to redesign online learning, working very carefully with the BTA to negotiate such a process. But I say negotiate, I really talk about collaboration and planning together to create a better system to educate our kids. We provided feedback to New York State, was an active participant providing testimony to the Reimagine Council, which was the statewide group that looked at reopening across the state of New York, and then larger groups that were convened by the State Education Department regionally, and again, provided feedback in those contexts on reopening. Athletics was an issue that we had to consider as well, and as people know, we are starting on September 29th, the day after Yom Kippur, where we will start our varsity athletics in several sports: field hockey, soccer, girls swimming, girls tennis, cross country as well, and football and volleyball have been postponed to the spring by the state. JV sports will start then on October 5th. Worked very closely with the Department of Health. Just like to point out again this incredible relationship and the support of Dr. Mendoza, who's also a parent in our district. He has been just a great person to work with and a super partner in helping keep our kids safe as well, and we appreciate that. We engaged in our blueprint planning, our strategic planning, which in upcoming meetings we'll talk about a lot more when the time is right, and really focus largely on diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, which is so important to us in the district and will continue to be a focus for us going forward, particularly this year. And family feedback that we gathered along the way and continue to engage our families through principal PTSA meetings, the virtual town halls that I've had the opportunity to participate in with community members. And we engaged our staff also in those same types of meetings to gather their feedback prior to reopening. This kind of says it all about our reopening process. Thanks to Lou Limo for allowing his picture to be shown, but this kind of sums it up throughout the summers. We continue to work through guidance and Lou did such a great job reading so much of that, especially on the health and safety side, as did Dr. Baker, our assistant superintendent on the instructional side, and everybody who participated, our entire leadership team, teacher leaders, teacher groups, staff members from throughout the district. And where we landed was yes to a hybrid program, K-12. We would have loved to have had all kids here every day. That is what we're all about. That is what we would like. However, as the planning continued, it became impossible to do so. Some districts have been able to have K-5 kids in every day. That is because they have more space and more people. To divide kids into smaller groups, have them move about a building into smaller groups, and make that time worthwhile, you need enough people to be with them. And we did not have enough staff members to do that. We also didn't have the space to feel as though we could move those small groups successfully and keep people safe, adhering to the social distancing guidelines. However, it's also important to point out that we really made program determinations after we said it just doesn't feel like a safety, a high quality safety decision. We also feel like the program would be very diluted if we're literally putting kids in small groups in places to not receive a high quality experience from a teacher the entire time, but rather be supervised in some space while they're awaiting that. It just did not seem like a good approach, and that we could do more for kids in a hybrid environment than we could there. Again, the number one determining factor for that was safety, but it also was a programmatic decision at the end of the day as well. And we landed on remote Wednesdays to give the entire class the opportunity to connect, albeit electronically, but also the opportunity to reconnect and collaborate as a staff and have deep cleaning in each of the buildings. However, that's a pretty robust day. So kids will be at the 6 through 12 level following their cycle day schedule, a condensed schedule that starts a little bit later to honor the desire for a later school start time, which we're really glad about. I know at least in my house, there's certainly a lot of excitement about that too, but also to make sure that we're taking the best advantage of time that we have. That'll be a pretty rigorous day for kids. Tomorrow will be the first one, so we're looking forward to seeing how that works too. I mentioned the later start. We also had an all remote option for families, and 79% of our families did land at that place. I'm sorry, 21%, 79% are in the hybrid model. We put a hold on hiring the BHS assistant principal in order to add courses. And so, not to be too confusing, we held on the AP to offer AP. In other words, we're holding on the assistant principal so we could offer additional advanced placement courses, but also electives. So we covered the widest, largest group of people we could possibly help in the remote world and make sure we're giving as much to as many as we possibly could. I mentioned athletics beginning on the 29th. We have very limited activities at school. Masks and distance are a key. I was so happy to hear Stella speak to that and how great our kids, in fact, they've been about masking, had very little issue with that. And distancing has been something that kids have been excellent about also, but clearly Stella's given us some suggestions about how to rethink that also. We have a lot of rigorous cleaning happening each and every day. We have a antimicrobial substance called Zuno being used on our desks. It has a 30-day layer of protection. At the 6-12 level where kids are switching classes, they can also use a placemat over those desks to protect them as well. It's an individualized approach to that. But each evening, all those high-touch surfaces are being cleaned each evening, and then the rigorous cleaning in the middle of the week as well. I should say the more rigorous cleaning, it's rigorous every day. And we have our health screenings happening each and every day. You can't come to school without filling out that health screening, or you can come, but then you'll have to have a conversation with the nurse or administrator if you have not completed that. And we have temperatures being taken for everybody coming into the building each day also. On the no side, where we landed was no to many activities. Most of them are not happening. And as Eleanor pointed out, we're not even having parent volunteers to come in for the pictures. We're really trying to reduce exposure as much as possible. So most parent meetings will take place electronically at this point. Almost all, I'd say about 95% of them. There are some rare exceptions. But for the most part, we are leveraging technology as much as we can, and that's to keep all kids safe, all staff members safe, security staff, reception staff, everybody here. The less exposure, the better. We know that. We know it's healthier. We know we can use technology effectively to do this work. So as much as we can't wait to see people in person, we're trying to limit that as much as possible. We appreciate people's understanding with that as well. We are not doing testing on site. Really important to point out, sometimes when the governor speaks about testing in schools, it would give people the impression that there's testing somehow in schools. There's not. We refer testing through to people's doctors, but also to the Monroe County Department of Public Health in terms of where people can go get testing. And we have that information posted on our website also. You can't attend with a fever, any of the symptoms, and you can't come back without a negative test, be symptom-free, and a doctor's note. Those are all prescribed by the State Department of Health as well. And we're not zooming into classrooms either. It's something that's come up several times. We have a serious issue with privacy that we're concerned about for what happens in terms of zooming into classrooms when kids are supposed to be at their best, taking risks, trying new things. And we don't want to expose them to that camera, the recording, the potential Snapchat, the potential Instagram post, the ways that they could be embarrassed by their participation in a classroom and the particular needs that they might have along the way. So we want to be very cognizant of that. And also it's not a very effective pedagogical strategy to balance both online instruction and in-person instruction simultaneously. It's something that we are not doing certainly at this point. So we had a takeoff. So we landed and then we also took off. And as I mentioned, 79% hybrid, 21% all remote, thinking a lot about health and safety as a focus. Our transportation has gone really, really well in the buildings. People have done a great job. We appreciate everybody's patience around pickup and drop off and timing for that. People seem to be really willing to just take a little bit slower, take their time and be patient with a safe drop off and a safe pickup. And many people have opted for that instead of transportation, which has created an even safer situation on each one of our buses. So we appreciate that. Masks and distancing have been great. We've distributed a ton of devices. We're really limited at this point. We're trying to get them in as fast as we can, and we will be a one-to-one environment as soon as those orders all come in. And they've been placed for quite some time. We're just waiting on delivery, as most schools across the country are, in fact. Working through the minor turbulence to take the airplane analogies a little bit further and all the little tweaks along the way. Let us know how things are working. Tell us where we can make improvements. There's a lot of little pieces that we're finding we need to clarify, sometimes for ourselves, in fact, because as the plans have adapted and changed and we've tried to be malleable and tried to be flexible with people, we've said, oh, you know what, that makes more sense. Let's not do that. But we need to make sure we get that word out and then it's clear and then all of our staff members know that too, and that we're clear on each of those items as we make all of those changes. So just let us know and we can make an adjustment and provide the right information. And I thank everybody in the community for their patience, their kindness, and their partnership right now and in advance. As I say to my kids often, you'll get a whole lot more with honey, and we appreciate that. We appreciate everybody really being thoughtful in that and recognizing the partnership that is so important to us, and that being patient, being kind with the people that you're working with here is so helpful and makes their job that much better, and the work with your kids, I think, that much more effective as well. The great start, some in pictures. I just want to point out that picture in the middle down below, one of the new spaces at Council Rock. If it gives you a sense for how open, how bright, how crisp, how colorful it is, it's really fantastic. And even though these people all have masks on, I think you can see the smile in their eyes, whether that's Mr. Tappan, Dr. Rio, or the teachers that are pictured as well. I see up in the right-hand corner, Mrs. Files, her eyes say it all, I think, as kids are coming in. This has just become who we are and what it looks like. And frankly, being around the buildings the last several days, it is, I know this is an overused phrase at this point, but the new normal. Kids seem to just be used to it already and working really, really well with it. And it is working. And as always, kids can be our leaders in so many ways. I want to make sure people are clear on some of the messages I'm sending to staff as well, and the things that we're talking about internally, and what we want people in the community to know as we reopen. We recognize that what lies ahead is important to keep thinking about. And the fact that right now we've done our best with what we've been given and entirely remain focused on safety, and we will continue to do so. We recognize going forward that we have limited resources. We need to be aware of the changing financial picture throughout the state and what the impact will be on that. And I'll speak about that when we go to the budget guidelines in just a minute as well. We need to continue to focus on what I just mentioned: flexibility, patience, kindness, mutual respect, and understanding. I think that's so important. And we need to work together. We won't always agree, whether it's community members, internally as staff members. We won't always agree. We should always be agreeable, though. I do think it's really important to continue to think about that notion of respectful discourse and how do we work together, particularly in this moment. And that doesn't mean people can't be upset about things. They can't be passionate about the work and advocating for something. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying let's keep working on that partnership and keep working together. We have a really good collaborative environment here. We want to maintain that in a time where there's a lot of frustration for so many different reasons. Diversity, equity, inclusion work is a priority here. And it's a priority here because of humanity, not politics. I want to be clear on that. We have deep concern about what's happening right now around us, even locally here, what's happening around us, and continue to think deeply about the death of Daniel Prude and what that says about the conditions for many of the people in our community, right here in Brighton, but across our country as well. That's an issue of humanity, not politics. And so in this conversation and in our placing a sign on the lawn that says Black Lives Matter, and in fundraiser at the middle school around Black Lives Matter, this conversation has come up many times around particular politics and where this has become a political conversation. And I recognize where this is a political movement and there are political conversations being had throughout our country. I can specifically speak though to our district, and what we're focused on right now is saying that Black Lives Matter. That Black Lives Matter, that Brighton believes Black Lives Matter, and that's a conversation that we should be having here and that we should be expressing to our community. That is not a political conversation though for us here at school. It's a matter of recognizing this and talking in the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, understanding the importance of an anti-racism, anti-bias curriculum, and all of the work that was outlined earlier in the summer that we said to the community we would commit to, and that our blueprint has supported. We've talked about in a previous meeting, and we'll talk more about throughout the community. But along those lines, what we want to make sure that is also clear to people is in our classrooms and in this space right now, particularly over the next couple of months with an election coming, we need to also make space for all perspectives, not hateful, bigoted perspectives, but all perspectives. We shouldn't have above our classroom doors a bumper sticker that says riding with Biden or make America great again. Neither one. We should be open to respectful dialogue, open to conversations in our classrooms. And we should make sure that we understand the power in our voice, and that when we create an environment where a child feels as though they can't express themselves because they're walking into a space that is specifically endorsing just one perspective, what that can cause in terms of where people can have a conversation and should have a conversation. We should be the place as an educational institution where that can happen and can happen well. We want to be really aware of that in this moment. And I realize the hypocrisy for some people in my conversation previous about Black Lives Matter relative to political conversation. In my opinion, we're talking about humanity, not politics, when we have that conversation about Black Lives Matter. And I also have shared these words from Dr. Martin Luther King from Birmingham Jail, of course, with our staff, and make really think that people in our community hopefully can think about this sentiment too. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away, and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. And I think this is the place where we can work awfully hard on lifting the dark clouds of racial prejudice and that deep fog of misunderstanding, and hopefully dispel that fear that exists in our communities as well, in working with all our families. And so that's a focus that I've shared with our staff, and something that we're thinking about here in our reopening, and we'll continue to think about throughout the year. Upcoming updates I'll be giving you around diversity, equity, inclusion work in more detail, so people really understand what we are doing in those areas. We want to talk about budget and programming for next year as well. I'll give you reopening updates in future meetings as well, because we want to continue to monitor our situation, and are hopeful in October that we'll have a mechanism set up also to evaluate, gather feedback, and share that in our community. And capital project updates, I think, will be really important as we move ahead also. And I want to say thank you to our community for all of their support, all of the work that everybody has done community-wise to make this all happen, but very directly say to our staff, I can't thank them enough for all the work that they've done to make this happen and provide this great environment. There was so much joy and happiness as kids walked back through the doors. And what I found, and we've seen over and over again, and I've heard this happen in places across the state, is as soon as people are back together, a lot of anxiety has been reduced, and there's just a lot of joyfulness in being around each other. I said to a group of kids today in the middle school I was visiting in their classroom that, generally speaking, I have found in my time here that we have really good, friendly kids in this community. But I noticed as I was taking a walk last Friday in the evening with my wife, we bumped into a couple different groups of kids along the way. I got to tell you, never more friendly from a group that was already pretty friendly and warm. Like, there just seemed to be a happiness to have been back to school and to be able to see people and to participate in education. And I asked that same middle school class, so how do you feel about it? Are you glad to be back, or would you rather be at home? Every single child in that classroom put their hand up saying they were glad to be back. Now, I've got to tell you, we hope we offer a great product and the kids really enjoy being here, but it's not typically developmentally the case where everybody in middle school puts their hand up to say, I'm so glad to be here. So it was really good to see. And I think, again, we're off to a really good start. Thank the board for all their support along the way as well in making this happen. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for sharing those updated remarks around the opening of school and where we are currently, and the types of things that we're working on. And we look forward to continuing updates, continuing dialogues on every single one of those items. So up next on our agenda, we have traditionally this meeting of the year, we approve the budget guidelines, the budget calendar. And Kevin, I didn't ask you ahead of time, but are you going to share a screen and post these? Do you and Lou have comment?
Right there for you. So I just would speak to these very briefly, Mark. They are very similar to previous years with a few exceptions that I've highlighted for you. And essentially what we speak to you about every year is making sure that as we're working through the budget, our guidelines are to meet all of the mandates, considering health and safety, the legal requirements, of course, make sure we're fulfilling our obligations contractually. But we really want to make sure this year that we're focused on a few additional areas. One is to understand the risks associated with the economic impact relative to the pandemic. And what I'm getting at is threats to cuts in funding federally and concern over our potential 20% reduction here in the state currently and moving forward. So the real quick synopsis of this is, if revenue continues to fall in the state and not exist, this year's revenues will be affected. We have budgeted essentially to be able to use reserves to accommodate for that if that happens. But there is then an impact in future budgets to not have those reserves available. So with what would be ongoing expenses, you can't continue to support those with reserves in perpetuity. So we need to be aware of that. Also then aware going into next year, what does that mean for our funding going forward? A stimulus package from the federal government is essential in this area. So for anybody listening, write to your congressman and senator. Congressman Morelli's been very, very supportive in that conversation. Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, also very supportive, but they've got to make it happen. We need that funding in the state of New York for local governments, local schools and governments, which is how it's been described, that stimulus money in order to supplant what we think will be a significant drop in state aid in a district that is already starving relative to state aid. So that is something for us to be thinking about. And then we need to also be thinking about this other item towards the bottom, really two big chunks and something we want to talk to you about sooner rather than later. One is considering the economic climate changing needs. We just need to really think about where we will have to think about reducing program going forward. We already reduced programs significantly in last year's budget. So this is a very, very difficult conversation. We'll have to be working on that throughout the year, analyzing potentials for reduction. We also need to have a conversation with you and with the community about full-day kindergarten. The reality is we used many of the positions, all of the positions that we had budgeted for, that we were building towards for full-day kindergarten program to support existing program this year, just to continue to operate. And so we really need to have a heart-to-heart about what will we do going forward, and can we open in the fall of 2021? There would be nothing more disappointing than me saying to you that we won't be able to do that. We are digging into that right now and developing some analysis, and we'll come back to you and talk about that. We want to make sure the community knows that as soon as possible, but that likely won't be until the middle of the year when we will know what our budget picture looks like more clearly and can make those decisions. But we really have to dig into that as well. Other than that, the typical guidelines exist around compliance with the tax cap, et cetera, and supporting the blueprint plan. But those are the guidelines for this year that we would be proposing to you as a school board.
Okay, thank you very much. And the calendar itself is standard calendar dates, right? There's been no further adjustment or any decisions at all as far as next spring adjusting anything yet, right?
No, we've been given no indication that the vote would be held any differently or at any different time.
Okay. All right, let's excuse me. Let's get a motion on the table, and then if anybody has any questions of Kevin or discussion around the guidelines, we'll go ahead and do that. So a motion, please, to approve the budget guidelines and budget calendar as provided to us, outlined and included in the agenda link for our meeting this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Larry. Any further discussion, any further questions of Kevin on what he presented on the guidelines? Does anybody have anything to add? I think it's pretty clear. And the one thing I would add just briefly, just to remind folks that we are in a difficult long-term situation financially. And you outlined it tonight to begin. We talked about it extensively last spring. We'll continue to discuss it really all year leading up to the next budget approval. But all of the factors that you've outlined and all of the things that are going on in the ever-changing situation and the unknowns around financial situation, both on the revenue and the expenditure side, it's going to be a long haul. It's going to be a difficult situation. I wouldn't want anybody to in the community to think otherwise. We're still in a situation that exists. We haven't gotten out of that. It's going to probably get worse before it gets better, depending upon all types of economic activity and what the federal government, as you clearly outlined, decides to do with the next stimulus. And hopefully that's sooner rather than later. And it includes a large chunk to school districts along with local governments, because we all have to have that. There are no other sources of revenue at the current time to be able to handle it otherwise. So, all right then, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Thank you. That's 7 in favor and none opposed. And you will notice that the calendar begins tonight and goes all the way through to mid-May. So budget season is here. Tonight, we also have a first read on a policy. I'll ask for a motion to approve, and then we'll have conversation. Motion.
So moved.
Okay, that's all right. Motion to approve first read on the following policy: 4241, administration, district operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that was a motion by Andrea.
Second.
Second by Sue. I'm sorry. You had a chance to read this. We've had this. This is new policy. Pretty clear that there are a number of things that we're going to work on policy-wise over the next month or so, or 2 months, with regard to operations and elements of the pandemic operating, and making sure that our policy has full alignment with everything from the New York State Department of Health, the State Education Department, the Monroe County Health Department, and the governor's directives, so the governor's office. And that's what this does. It sets a page in terms of understanding on district operations with regard to return to work and in-person instruction. And it's pretty clear, and it's something that we needed to do, and we'll probably have to do some additional policy work around that just to make sure there's alignment, and there also is clarity as to if something occurs, what policy pertains. I guess in a nutshell, that's the way I would explain it. Does anybody have any questions or of anyone or a comment? Again, this is first read, so it will remain open for comment or input until it comes back to us for second read and becomes policy. Then all in favor of first read?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. 7 in favor and none opposed. And then a motion, please, for approval of our consent agenda this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Julene, and seconded by Karen. Consent agenda tonight does include a couple of gifts that I would like to acknowledge. These are 2 gifts from the Brighton Education Fund. One of $800 to music teacher Chris Dozer to organize Zoom music composition competition to connect Fres students with musicians and composers around the world. And also $750 donation for 10 individual virtual reality headsets for the counseling department, which connect to most smartphones to allow students to visit college campuses virtually despite travel restrictions. And I guarantee you, prior to mid-March last year, no one would ever imagine seeing these 2 gifts being made ever to anybody, right? So those 2 gifts, we appreciate the Brighton Education Fund as always, and those who donate to the fund. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That's 7 in favor and none opposed. Board members, are there any other items of business this evening that you'd like to bring up? Dr. McGowan, anything further this evening?
No, not at all. Thanks for everybody, their support and such a great opening.
Fantastic. And let's everybody's stay healthy, stay safe, and let's make sure we continue that. So thank you. We next meet on September 29th. That meeting will also be via Zoom, and we will continue to make adjustments as necessary as we head into October and we see, what things bring. So, but the September 29th Board of Education regular meeting will be held virtually again. So a motion, please, to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Julene and seconded by Larry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried, 7 in favor, none opposed. So thank you, everyone, and good evening.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.